All right, let's move on to the Reds. The Reds are 4-2 since we last spoke. They're currently 52-55, fourth in the NL Central, and 9 games back of the first place Brewers. They are 4.5 games out of the third wildcard spot in the National League. Skinny, of course, the MLB trade deadline came and went. The Reds made some deals prior to the deadline. I'll rattle them off quickly here, and then we can talk a little bit about what's going on. They traded outfielder Austin Slater, infielder Levon Soto, and cash considerations to Baltimore for a player to be named or cash. They acquired utility man Davis Wenzel from the Rangers in exchange for cash considerations and then optioned him to AAA. They traded reliever Lucas Sims to the Red Sox for young right-handed pitcher Ovis Portes, who pitched in rookie ball and single A this year. Frankie Montas was traded to the Milwaukee Brewers in exchange for 25-year-old outfielder Joey Wiemer and veteran right-handed pitcher Jacob Junis. The Reds also got $1 million in that deal. That was probably the biggest deal that I would take note of. And then finally, they dealt minor league catcher Andrew Salcedo to the Seattle Mariners for 6-year veteran Ty France and cash considerations. Skinny, when you hear all of that, you look at what the Reds did leading up to the trade deadline. Are the Reds being reasonable and patient and continuing to work the plan that they set forth 2 years ago? Or are they caught in between competing now and building something for the future and just doing a whole bunch of nothing at this point?
Yeah, I think they're caught in between a little bit, Rick. None of the moves getting guys back moved the needle, right? I mean, but I will give them this. I mean, look, can you catch Ty France lightning in a bottle for 2 months? Maybe you can. I mean, he's 2 years removed from being an all-star, for goodness sakes. And so there's something there. And you gave up literally, and I mean this, maybe the worst player in your whole organization to get him. I mean, the kid, the Salcedo kid, just has never progressed very high. And if you look at his minor league numbers, they're horrifically bad. I think I heard, or somebody told me, he had gotten up to like either A and had played so poorly that they actually sent him back to developmental. So you didn't give up anything.
Like 2 or 3 years at the place he's been, right? Double A or single A, wherever he was.
Yeah, I don't think he's risen above A. So the Lucas Sims one was interesting because he is currently a serviceable bullpen arm. I know, he blew the game on Sunday, but he's a serviceable bullpen arm. But to me, you got to prospect back, and I think the Reds do need some prospects as well, especially in the bullpen. And getting this kid back in exchange, he's a pretty high prospect in the Red Sox organization. I mean, everything else to me was a big yawn. I mean, you could argue, should they have tried to trade Nick Martinez? Maybe. Could they have tried to get something of more significance in the outfield? Maybe, but there weren't a lot of blockbusters there was a lot of trading. There just wasn't a lot of blockbusters that were made.
And it feels like there rarely are. Everyone always talks about all the stuff that's going to happen at the deadline. And it feels like a few teams maybe do something and everyone else is doing a lot like what the Reds did here. The other thing I would say, Skinny, is this team is not built for a run. And maybe they can catch lightning in a bottle. Maybe something will happen for them. But even if you were to add a right-handed hitter in the outfield to add to this lineup, what would you have been prepared to give up for that? Because it doesn't really mean anything this year, likely. I mean, best chance. Well, you're fighting for a last wild card spot and sneaking your way in.
Well, Arizona snuck its way in last year, so there's something to be said about sneaking your way in. But to your point, if you're going to do that, and I think we talked about it on the podcast, I wasn't just looking for the rental. I was looking for, hey, if you're going to make that deal, it's somebody who's going to be part of your future too. And, maybe that guy just wasn't out there and there wasn't a trade partner, or the trade partner you thought you had or wanted was asking too much in return. And there is a line in the sand that you draw, and we're never going to know where that was and who those players were. And I wasn't expecting the needle to be moved much for me. I honestly expected them to maybe sell off a little bit more. Like I said, I'm a little surprised Nick Martinez got traded, but not overly surprised. I mean, he's still they need somebody to pitch, for goodness sakes, and they're running out of arms.
Are you surprised they didn't move Jonathan India?
No, there's a part of me that maybe the solution for the outfield bat we're talking about comes in the offseason, where Matt McClain is moved to shortstop, India stays at second, and you move Ellie De La Cruz to the outfield.
Wow. You think they would actually do that based on the way his star has risen this year?
I think it's a consideration. Sure. I mean, you've got to do something with your outfield. And again, maybe that does come this offseason in a signing. But to Jonathan India's credit, he's played his way back into the core, right? I felt like he played his way very much out of the core as you approach spring training, that it felt like, where's Jonathan India going to play? Well, he's been a pretty valuable part of this team this year.
I didn't have much expectations for the trade deadline.
I
I
didn't
didn't
either.
really think there was a big move for them to make, other than, like you said, if there was like an outfielder out there that would be a multiple year guy that could add to the future, then that made sense. I didn't really think that was realistic, and it turned out not to be. At the same time, I am concerned about, I mean, the current roster and what it's set up for over the next year or two doesn't excite me the way it did a year ago. And
Understood.
that's my biggest concern is just, I think what they did, the trade deadline was probably fine. I don't know that they should have done a lot more. At the same time, when I look at them, I don't really know what the plan is going forward. I'm not sure that they have a clear plan in place right now and that they're really working that.
Yeah, I mean, in your outfield right now, can you really trust TJ Friedl to stay healthy? That's part of the mix, right? You got left-handed hitting outfielders who really don't hit. Jake Fraley's hitting for a bit of an average, and I know he's going through a lot of stuff, so I'm going to take that as a little bit of maybe that's the power drain for him. But I mean, he's honestly, even in his best, he's a platoon hitting outfielder who's probably best served as a fourth or fifth outfielder. Will Benson's probably best served being in AAA at the moment. So yeah, to your point, I just don't know. They're going to have to do something in this offseason to add that outfield bat, whether that's moving Ellie there because that just takes a bat from the infield to the outfield and you're plugging McLean's bat into the infield and you're expecting Marte to bounce back and you're expecting CES to bounce back. And maybe then you can move Spencer Steer back to the outfield as a left fielder. And, you got an outfield of Friedl in right, Ellie in center and Steer in left. And that's a pretty good outfield on paper. But yeah, I don't know what the plan is. The one good part of the season is what we've seen from really the top of the rotation. They've emerged into guys as long as they're healthy. And that's the big if with Nick Lodolo, that emerges guys who I think you can count on for many years to come.
But that's almost the frustrating part of this season.
I know.
To me. It's like, if that happened, I would have thought this team was a surefire playoff team and would feel great about the future.
Part of the problem is Hunter Green has thrown out of his last 3 starts, 2 of them, he's thrown 7 innings of shutout baseball, and they didn't win either game. That's frustrating.
Right. And that's exactly the problem. It's like, you would think if Hunter Green had the year that he's had to this point, Nick Lodolo had the year that he had to this point. And I mean, even some of the other pitching that they've gotten has been great. And yet there's zero excitement from my perspective about what they have coming back next year. I mean, I just don't see the optimism about the future at this point. And that's really discouraging.
Can you mention this? How does a guy steal 4 bases in a game and not score a run?
That's incredible. I've never seen something impossible. Like that. Stealing 4 bases is incredible, by the way.
Yes, it is.
That's pretty insane to watch.
It is.
Yeah.
Steal 4 bases in the middle of your order comes up, which is not a very good middle of the order. We'll agree with that. But the middle of your order comes up and he doesn't score a single solitary run. Whew.
It's almost impossible. The Reds activated TJ Friedl, an option to AAA outfielder Reese Hines over the course of the last week. After his incredible 6-game stretch to start his career, during which he hit 500 with 5 home runs, Hines went 1 for 16 over his next 4 games before he was optioned to AAA. Do you think the Reds made the right decision to send Reese Hines back to Louisville and keep Will Benson?
I do, and I know that, again, there's so many left-handed hitting outfield bats, it seems like you'd like to keep the right-handed guy around. But the one thing I think you'd like to do with Reese Hines is say, hey, listen, you had a nice little level of success for a few days. Then they kind of did this adjustment. So now let's go to Louisville and let's take some of the things you learned up here at the big league level, transfer him down there, get real confidence going, and then maybe bring him back in September and see what happens there. I do think it was the right move. I would have hated to see the kid get in a 1 for 30 rut up here, fall into whatever bad habits he was having at Louisville that led to him hitting 216 and striking out all the time. And maybe just having some level of, hey, I did have success at the big league level. It wasn't a long level, but I had success there. And let me figure out what I did to have that success and transfer that down to AAA and then have success down there and come back up and do it again in the big leagues. I do think it was the right move.
There was a lot of hand-wringing about this when it happened, and I get that from the standpoint of wanting to compete right now. Like, do I think Reese Hines is a better player to have on your roster currently than Will Benson, given he just went through that insane power surge, right, and there's maybe upside that he could do something like that, or at least give you a right-handed power hitter in your lineup compared to essentially nothing from Will Benson? Yes, I do think that's probably a better move for this current team. But this move wasn't made for this year's team. This move was made for Reese Hines and his development and his future. And I think that's the right thing, because I also don't think he's good enough to help push this team over the edge this year. And neither he or Will Benson was going to do that. Is he a better player than Will Benson? Quite possibly. Is he going to give you more than Will Benson the rest of this year? Maybe. That's definitely arguable. But what is not arguable is that for Reese Hines' future, it's best that he develops a little bit more slowly, goes back to AAA and works on some of the things that he needs to work on.
Agreed. 100%.
Any other thoughts on the Reds here?
No, it's just, it's been so frustrating to watch them sweep or beat good teams and then flip around. It feels like they've pissed away so many games. The Hunter Green start against Detroit where they, had a chance to win that one and should have won that one. The one this week where you go 7 shutout innings and they lose the Sunday game. You flip 3 to 5 to 6 of these goofy losses, the way they've lost them around. I mean, you are very much in the playoff mix, but I'm not talking about a big turn. I'm talking about 3 to 6 games.
Skinny, they're 8-19 in one-run games.
Well,
8-19 in one-run games. There's only like one other team in the major leagues that's that bad.
Well, I'll say this. David Bell couldn't have mismanaged Sunday's game any worse with the bullpen. He could not. I don't know what the aversion is to Sam Moll. I know, he's afraid of him against right-handed hitters. And if you look at his splits, I mean, right-handers hit him better than left-handers do. That's usually natural, but it's not like right-handers are batting 390 off the guy with 1,000 OPS, for goodness sakes. And then with the bases loaded, arguably your wildest reliever, Lucas Sims, who averages 5 walks per 9 innings, and I think if I crunched the numbers the other day when I looked at it, he's clearly the wildest of the group in that regard. You bring him into the high leverage bases loaded situation, and what does he do with the first guy? Walks in the go ahead, one turned out to be the winning run. What are we doing?
What are we doing?
And their situational hitting is embarrassing. Listen, I know people and our friend Mo Egger hates the contact play, and we can argue those merits. I'm not going to dive into that. But it is a thing that you go on contact. You know what else the hitter can do? And I know it's major league pitching, but the other day, Jamer Candelario with Ellie on second base, you got to pull a ball to get him to third. Instead, he tries to slap one the other way. It hits it right at the shortstop. That's where Ellie got thrown out at third. He got caught in no man's land. Spent the Detroit game on that Friday night. Guy on third, the tying run. And what does Tyler Stevens do? He hits a slow grounder to third for the contact play. Guy's thrown out at the plate. Ellie gets thrown out on a contact play. How about we situational hit better?
That's an option. No one wants to hear that, but that is an option. The problem is this team just isn't good enough. That's what it comes down to. This team has not been good enough all year long.
Yep.
Sure, you can stop watching, but let's be honest. You want to know more. Tap the links or even better, click subscribe to stay in the know.